We're hearing directly from the family of the Arkansas mom who was found shot dead, her two 6-year-old children dead too, all inside their massive home. The bodies were found a day after a key hearing in a brutal divorce case involving Charity Beallis and her doctor ex-husband. What Charity's family is now doing as law enforcement remains tight-lipped about her death investigation and what her estranged husband, who had reportedly abused her, is up to. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey guys, real quick, there's a reason On the Case is one of the most watched shows on YouTube, just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest personal injury law firm. They're a firm of more than 1,000 attorneys who have recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. That's 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/OTC. You can click the link below or scan the QR code on our screen. We have some shocking new details coming in after an interview we just did with the family of Charity Beallis. I spoke to her adult son, who's now 25, and her dad. Now, before I get into what they told me, I want to remind you of how we got to this point in this investigation that now involves the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Secret Service. It's unclear why those federal agencies are involved, but it's definitely something that you don't typically see in cases like this. Now, here's a picture of Charity Beallis with who we believe are her two children, both of them roughly 6 years old. They lived in the tiny town of Bonanza, Arkansas. It's a small town right along the Oklahoma border, population 575. And this is where Charity lived. A massive 4-bedroom house that's down a secluded rural road. Zillow lists its value at around $800,000, and that is nearly 4 times the amount of the average home price in that town. Police say on December 3rd, they were called to the Beallis home in Bonanza, Arkansas, and it was around 9:30 in the morning. Charity's estranged husband was not living in the house because of a no-contact order that Charity had against him related to a domestic abuse case. Now, the call was a welfare check. The Sebastian County Sheriff's Office says that 2 workers allowed them to get access to the home, and that is when they made a terrible discovery. Charity was dead, and so were her 2 6-year-old children. All 3 had been shot, and it's unclear if deputies believe those gunshots were fired by someone who was outside the home, or if perhaps Charity had harmed herself and her kids. Deputies say the Arkansas Crime Lab is working to determine that. Now, I spoke to John Powell, who is Charity's son, and Randy Powell, who is Charity's dad. I started our interview asking them what investigators have told them, and they told me that they have virtually heard nothing. They say they found out about the deaths on Facebook. But Charity's dad says he believes he knows an important detail about how his daughter's body was found. What have they told you about, and I know this is really difficult to talk about, and you probably didn't think a couple weeks ago that you'd be doing interviews like this, but what did they tell you about how Charity and the 2 kids were found in the home?
Nothing.
They haven't let us know anything about no details or nothing.
They told us nothing.
We found out that they were dead through Facebook, through people messaging us.
I found out from a sheriff of another county that I went to high school with. He called the coroner, and the coroner had him to tell me that the babies were shot through the chest and my daughter was shot through the chest and through the head.
The Sebastian County Sheriff's Office is running this investigation. They say they are following up on countless tips that have come in since Charity and the children's deaths. They say they're processing 12 search warrants right now. They may get more as this investigation continues. They haven't confirmed the details that Charity's dad talked about when he said that she was found with 2 gunshot wounds. Deputies say they are waiting for autopsy results to come back, as well as test results related to evidence that's been collected. What was Charity like for people who are just starting to see and hear about this story? I mean, we've heard a lot about the divorce that she went through and being the victim of domestic violence. What do you want people to know about her?
She was very loving. She loved everybody, no matter color, race, whether they were rich or poor. She loved everybody, was a great mother, and give all her love and time and compassion to those children. And she spent the last 9 months trying to save their lives. And nobody in Sebastian County would listen and do anything. There's stuff on her Facebook page where she wrote letters where the prosecuting attorney wouldn't even accept her letters from her or talk to her or anything. You can search her Facebook page and find that.
A key part of this story is the timing of when Charity and the kids were found dead on December 3rd, a day after Charity had a final court hearing related to her divorce from a man named Randy Beallis, who's a doctor and the father of the 2 children. Now, through his attorney, Randy Beallis has said that he had nothing to do with the deaths, and he's not a suspect, and he has not been arrested or charged in relation to these tragic deaths, and we don't know if someone came into the home to kill Charity and the kids. On the December 2nd hearing, Charity's family says a judge ruled that she would have to split custody with her estranged husband when it came to the kids. Court documents say they would also sell their physical assets and the money would be split. But as a reminder, police have not yet said anything about the manner of deaths here. Now, another important piece of context in talking about the divorce is that Randy Beallis pleaded guilty in October in connection to a case where he was accused of strangling Charity in front of the kids back in February. Charity filed for divorce shortly after in March. Now, I did have to ask Charity's family a very difficult question, and it's about a theory that's been speculated that this case could be the result of a murder-suicide following a difficult decision in a heated divorce case that went on for months, especially when it comes to the custody of the children. You know, the next question is not an easy one to ask, but since law enforcement haven't released any information, we know that she had a tough ruling in a custody situation on the day before that she was found. And it's been speculated by some that she might have done this to the young kids and then took her own life. Is there any possibility that could be what happened? Or do you believe that someone came into this house and did this to Charity and the two young kids?
There's no way, God's green earth, that she did that to herself and those children. There is no way. They would like Randy Beallis and all the people that's got their pockets full of his money would like us to believe that. There's no way that happened. They got joint custody in the divorce case. I was there. She knew it was going to be tough times, and she also knew that it would be around the time that the court was finished, that something that they might lose their lives. The judge actually didn't want me even around them, so I wasn't even allowed to protect my family.
Even after Randall Beallis pled guilty to choking my mother in front of the children, I mean, he pled guilty to those charges.
Sure did.
And they still granted joint custody.
That was because it was in October he pleads guilty, after this horrific, I've read the police report. I mean, it's just horrific what he was accused of doing. And then he pleads guilty in October. I saw his attorney said that he was going to get 2 weeks with the kids and then she would get 1 week with the kids.
Was a temporary basis. So the judge said he needed to catch up on the 9 months that he'd missed seeing them.
Randy Beallis pleaded guilty to domestic battery in the 3rd degree on October 6th of this year. He received a suspended sentence and he was fined $1,500. He was ordered to have no contact with Charity and he could only have contact with their children with court approval. Now, we don't know what role, if any, Charity's divorce and the history of being the victim of domestic violence played into whatever happened inside of that house. Dr. Beallis' attorney did send me a statement today in response to the accusations being made by Charity's family, where they claim that he has something to do with her death and the death of their children. Now, here's what Dr. Beallis' attorney said in response to that. Quote, "I represent Mr. Randall Beallis. Mr. Beallis has been cooperative with law enforcement and fully supports the Sebastian County Sheriff's Office investigation. We hope that the Sheriff's Office finds the truth about what happened to Mrs. Charity Beallis and their children. Mr. Beallis was not responsible for the death of Mrs. Beallis nor his children's deaths. Mr. and Mrs. Beallis had a full-day court hearing on Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. Mr. Randall Beallis was awarded joint custody, decision-making for the children's school and medical needs, and his children were set to be with him on a schedule of 2 weeks with Mr. Beallis and 1 week with Mrs. Beallis at some time on or around December 3rd, 2025. The tragic event occurred before Mr. Beallis was able to receive his children back from their mother. The Beallis children were not brought to the hearing by Mrs. Beallis, and she was ordered to provide them to Mr. Randall Beallis on Friday, December 5th, 2025. He is now heartbroken that the return of his children was taken away from him. Mr. Beallis has given a voluntary interview and has allowed access to anything requested by the Sebastian County Sheriff's Office in their investigation. Mrs. Beallis has made false accusations against Mr. Beallis in the past. Evidence of these prior false accusations can be found in her book that she published. The book that Charity wrote is called A Lifetime of Miracles, Transformation Through Tragedy. The lawyer also says he personally has a copy of that book in his possession. What was your mom's, how did she and Dr. Beallis come to be? That they were in a relationship and then got married? I mean, what was kind of the story of their relationship?
She was a nurse at the hospital, Mercy Hospital, and she told me herself that he flirted with her and even pinched her on the butt and done some other moves that she thought about filing the sexual harassment charges. But then he smooth talked her however he done it, and she started feeling sorry for him because he whined and cried that his wife had committed suicide, and she felt sorry for him and thought that she would try to console him, and it ended up a short time after that, they were in Mexico being married. Very short time afterwards.
Now, Charity and Dr. Beallis were actually married to each other twice. Court records show they divorced in 2012, and then they were married again in 2015, and that is when they had the 2 children who were killed inside of the home. This is a picture of Shauna Beallis. She died in 2012 at the age of 34. Various outlets are reporting that she took her own life with a gun. Dr. Beallis was never charged in that case, and police reportedly ruled her death a suicide. We found her obituary that describes her as someone who had fun living life. It lists Dr. Randy Beallis as one of the people she was survived by. Now, according to her family, Charity spent the past 9 months living with fear after being the victim of domestic violence. Arkansas State Senator Terry Rice told 5 News, a TV station in Arkansas, that Charity had reached out for help to get protection earlier this year.
She talked to state senators, tried to get a hold of governors.
She wrote letters to the governors, senators, attorney general, everybody else, and sent them all the paperwork that she had up to that date. The conviction, everything. Some tried to help, but we don't know exactly who.
Her family says that Charity had a goal of one day becoming a victim's advocate for other women who have been impacted by domestic violence, but now she will not get the chance to do that. It does appear that Charity's relationship, the one that led to her divorce, was toxic, to say the least.
Give me your phone. I'm shutting it off.
Here comes the next one. Yeah. What are you gonna do? It's called being the parent, buddy. My truck in my name. Yep. I paid for it.
Yep. Give me that phone.
This is a video clip that has since gone viral on Facebook. It was posted all the way back in 2020, and it reportedly shows Charity and Dr. Beallis in a confrontation with a man. And this video is posted on an account with someone by the name of Lonnie Mitz on Facebook. Now, the poster writes, quote, "This is Dr. Randall Scott Beallis and his wife Charity disciplining her son for not returning a text as soon as they thought he should. They appear in court in the morning to decide custody of the 17-year-old and the 2 babies seen in the video. Please share this, as those 2 shouldn't be in charge of a pet, much less children." Now, on May 20th of that year, not long after that video was posted, John Powell, Charity's son, who we spoke with, filed an emancipation document asking that he get the rights of an adult. He was slated to turn 18 a few months after that incident. In his request, he stated, quote, that on the 14th day of May 2020, that Charity Beallis and Randy Beallis did take a knife or ice pick and slashed and ruined the tires of John Randall Powell's 2005 Ford F-150 vehicle, that he bought the vehicle and the same is titled in his name. That John Randall Powell has a video of Charity Beallis and Randy Beallis doing the same. John, I know there's a video that's been going around the internet showing a interaction where I believe it shows Dr. Beallis and he has like an ice pick or something going into a Ford like F-150's tire. What happened there?
So I was living with him at the time, and me as well as my mother were pretty scared for our lives, you know, because he's very controlling and abusive. He would persuade her and tell her every move to make and everything to do when he would get mad about anything. So he pretty much made her go to stab the first tire, and she couldn't do that. And then that's when you see him come right after behind her with another knife and taunt me with it and go to stabbing my tires over something that wasn't even a big deal, just because he got mad and was just being controlling and trying to prove his point, I guess, that he's in control and nobody can stop him.
Randy, when you were at the custody hearing on Tuesday, just what stood out to you about Dr. Beallis at that hearing and the way that he acted?
Everything. Hatred for my daughter and my family.
Randy Beallis has not been named in connection to the death of Charity Beallis, but he is an admitted domestic abuser involved in a brutal divorce. Those are facts in this case. Now, the day after Charity and the kids' bodies were found, Dr. Beallis' attorney filed a motion to dismiss the divorce proceedings. Then, an attorney for John Powell filed a motion to intervene, asking the court to undo the dismissal of the divorce to allow him to become the administrator of Charity's estate. Then Dr. Beallis' attorney responded to that, saying that the divorce dismissal should be kept in place, writing, "If a party dies after the divorce hearing but before the written decree is entered, the divorce proceeding generally terminates and the surviving spouse is considered a widow or widower, not a divorcee. The court loses jurisdiction over the marriage and related property matters because legally there is no longer a marriage to dissolve," end quote. According to Charity's son's attorney, along with the custody of the children being determined at that December 2nd hearing, when it came to assets between Charity and Dr. Beallis, they agreed to a sale of real property and each party to keep their own vehicle. Now, I do need to note that the latest entry into court records when it comes to this divorce case between Dr. Randy Beallis and Charity Beallis involves Randy, who is Charity's dad, who you saw us interview. Now, this is a letter that is addressed to the attorneys for Charity's son and Dr. Beallis, and this is what it reads, quote, "The court wants to advise counsel that on December 3rd, 2025, my trial court assistant received a phone call from the plaintiff's father, Randy Powell, who was irate and made accusations directed to the court. Specifically, Mr. Powell stated that the judge might as well have pulled the trigger herself and that the judge essentially killed his daughter and grandchildren. Mr. Powell also stated the court has blood on her hands and asked if the court was still going to keep him from his grandchildren." Following said phone call, the court filed an incident report with the Fort Smith Police Department, end quote. Now, again, this case that is playing out, whatever the reality is of the tragedy that took place inside that home, there is a lot of emotion that is going on, and you could feel that emotion in talking to Charity Beallis' dad as well as her son. And as I finished my interview with John and Randy, I asked them about the two people in this case who should receive the most attention, and that's the young boy and the young girl, 6-year-old twins who were found dead alongside their mom. What do you want people to know about them?
That they were very smart and very, very precious and innocent. I mean, the little boy learned how to play chess in 45 minutes, and the girl at 6 years old could draw and paint pictures like a professional.
And they were very, very loving of other people and so pleasant, had a real bright light to shine. And we went to their church Sunday. They invited us up there, and they were loved by all the whole congregation was just beside herself in tears and mourning over them and the children. The children were as bright and as precious as any I've ever seen in my life.
Now, we are waiting for more information from the Sebastian County Sheriff's Office. At this point in time, we do not know what they believe happened inside the home. No one's been arrested in connection to the deaths of Charity and her children, as we don't even know the manner of death and whether law enforcement consider it suspicious. Search warrants are being filed and interviews are being done. The U.S. Secret Service, Arkansas State Police, and the Department of Homeland Security are assisting the Sebastian County Sheriff's Office in this case. Results of an autopsy have not been released, and Dr. Randy Beallis, through his attorney, has stated that he had nothing to do with the deaths, and it's unclear if the impact of domestic violence or a months-long divorce proceeding that came to a conclusion the day before Charity and the kids were found dead had anything to do with what happened inside that home. Join us now to talk a little bit more about these divorce proceedings that have been going on. In the case of the Beallises, good person to talk to about this, family law attorney Randy Kessler. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. So it seems like a very tragic but interesting turn of events in looking at this case. They have the final divorce proceedings on the 2nd. Charity and the kids are found dead on the 3rd. The estranged husband, Dr. Beallis, his attorney files to dismiss the divorce on the 4th. What would be the difference between this divorce being finalized, which is what Charity Beallis' family wants to be done, and then if the divorce is just dismissed as the doctor's lawyer asked for the court to do the day after she was found dead?
So it opens up a whole can of worms. You know, typically, and I guess what the doctor's lawyer is saying, listen, the assets are here. I'm the only spouse remaining of this marriage that's still intact, so they're mine, and we'll go through probate court and we'll figure out what to do with the assets in the court that deals with people who have died, you know, or their wills. And all things being equal, most courts would say that makes sense. Let's just shift it to probate court because the reason you file for divorce is to become unmarried. And at this point in time, this man is unmarried, so there's no more need for the divorce court. But it's a court of equity, Chris, so, you know, is there something fishy going on? And of course, if we had a crystal ball and we saw into the future where the state could prove that this man had something to do with his wife's death, then it would certainly be inequitable to let him profit by his wrong, by killing her and then putting the assets back into his possession as opposed to whatever the judge did with them. So there are a lot of moving parts here. It's not a simple answer for the judge. Of course, she died in a horrible car accident that was completely an accident. I imagine it would be open and shut, and the judge would say, go to probate court. This has some, why not wait a couple of days until there's an investigation before you preclude the divorce judge from finishing the job if he needed to or she needed to?
Because with the way the assets were split up, like I read in the document, it says like each one of them was going to get a vehicle and then they have to sell their physical property, which they do have a pretty large house. It was like $800,000 value home in you know, a small town in Arkansas. If the divorce is dismissed, does he get those assets? Does he get the full, if he sells the house, like is it his because she's not alive anymore to be able to claim whatever stake she was going to get if they had sold the house and the divorce was finalized?
Right, that would be the default. Of course, I don't know if there was a will and what the intestate laws would be, but if she died without a will, and again, I don't know Arkansas law or I don't know probate law, but if she died without a will and he's the next of kin, then he probably would get everything automatically. Another interesting issue would be what if there were still minor children, because then selling the house means they have to move faster. Good thing we don't have any of that issues, although I wish we had those issues. I wish we had children still alive to make that an interesting legal issue. But yes, if she died without a will, in all likelihood, the house goes to him. And then her family, her son who's contesting the divorce, would probably step in and say, it's not fair to give him the assets because he killed her. If that's going to be the claim, then the probate court can look into that. And again, you don't get to profit by your wrong. You don't get to kill somebody and inherit what they gave you because you were their spouse, if he is charged. And again, it's a big if. We're not saying he's been charged or that he's guilty.
But even with that, I mean, if the divorce, you know, if he, you know, this ends up being, you know, something that he has nothing to do with whatsoever, but still the divorce was on the 1 yard line to being done. I mean, they have the final hearing on Tuesday, and then because she passes away, like if he's not charged with anything, like he's still technically married, or like at the time of her death, they were still technically married.
Right, but divorces aren't final until they're signed and filed with the clerk. And of course, it's a different situation, right? When the court divided the assets, it was considering mom and the children and who was going to live in the house and the assets. All those things are different now. And so you would almost have to have a retrial of the divorce to figure out what should you be done now that she is not there, and she obviously doesn't need a car to be really silly about it. So typically when somebody dies in the middle of a divorce, it is dismissed. And I'll tell you, Chris, we had a case where we thought the divorce would be dismissed because our client died, but there was a paramour living in the house. And so the paramour had an interest in the house not being disposed of immediately, and they wanted to delay so that it would go into probate court. And the court said, no, I'm going to deal with that in the divorce, even though one of the parties is dead. So, you know, we talk a lot about courts of equity, and divorce courts are courts of equity, not just courts of law, where the courts have a little bit of leeway and discretion to figure out what's the right solution to this problem, because every family is different, and courts need a lot of discretion in family law.
Yeah, it's just, you know, you think of this case and then it just adds in, you know, this divorce was already, I mean, there's domestic violence that was involved in this divorce, you know, there's young kids that are involved. And then for this to happen the day after the hearing, you can see why it's getting a lot of attention. If she did not have a will and you have her son who's 25 saying that, you know, he would like to be the person in charge of the estate, you know, and assets of whatever she may have, you know, someone dies like this, she's on the final moments of finalizing a divorce. Who is the person who could then, like, what happens if you don't have a will?
Yeah, and my rudimentary understanding would be that if the divorce was finalized, then the son is the next of kin, and he gets those rights, and he inherits, and he is in charge. And if the divorce was not finalized, like the husband wants, then he's in charge. So it still, you know, has a big impact on how the assets are going to be divided, whether the judge dismisses the divorce or not. I imagine what a lot of judges do, and what this judge might be thinking, is to put everything on hold and tell the parties we're going to hold and see what happens if there's an investigation. And then I want the parties to try to work things out, the son and the husband, and try to figure out, is there any sort of compromise? Because each side has something to lose. If the divorce is dismissed, the property goes back to the husband. If the divorce is granted, then it looks like it goes to the son. So with that hanging over both their heads, there's a lot of financial incentive to resolve it. But again, I don't think finances are at the top of anybody's priority list right now. I think the son wants closure, he wants answers, he wants accountability, and I imagine he's going to hold on and fight until he figures out what happened to his mom.
Yeah, and it's you know, just incredibly sad case, whatever the outcome of it may be. And then you have this, you know, this divorce proceeding. We'll see how that, you know, plays out as well. Family law attorney Randy Kessler. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.